Woosah. Okay, let's get it.
Hi, I'm Ashlyn, and I'm going to share how 6 weeks in New York City changed the trajectory of my life. So, in 2012, I actually got the opportunity to attend a 6 week summer program at Columbia University Medical Center. And that's actually where I took my very first solo flight, solo trip anywhere, I think. And it was my first time in New York City, where, of course, I fell in love. I don't live there now, but I did fall in love, as people typically do. So, a little bit about my background academically. I graduated from the University of Central Florida, where I studied health sciences, a preclinical track, because at the time my goal was to become a dentist. That did change after this program. And speaking of the program, at the time, back in 2012, this was called the Summer Medical Dental Education Program, or SMDEP for short. Currently, I think back in 2016, they changed it a little bit to incorporate a couple more health professions, like nursing and physical therapy. So now it's called a SHPEP, which stands for Summer Health Professions Education Program. There we go, I got it. And so there are a lot of different schools around the country that facilitate this program. Typically, the process, at least when I did it several years ago, is you apply, you get a letter of recommendation. I assume we probably sent transcripts, and you can select your top three school choices in the application. So I remember Columbia was my number one choice, and then maybe UMD and J because it was near New York City, and um, like Connecticut or something, or Colorado. I don't remember, but it was a school I was not interested in really attending because I was just wanted to go to New York City at the time. But thankfully, I got my number one choice in Columbia. And so that's how I got to New York City. So, a little bit about this process because it's really one of the greater experiences of my life, because it was the first time I got to really go do something on my own. And you learn a lot about yourself as a 20-year-old or however old I was, going to a big city like New York for the first time by yourself. And it's cool because at the time we had Facebook groups. I think people still use Facebook groups, but it was really like a thing back then, and like Facebook albums. And so I got to meet a lot of the other participants before heading over. And so me and one girl who lived in Connecticut, she was driving in with her family and offered to pick me up from the airport. And so I met her. We became close throughout the program. A lot of other individuals, we got to chat beforehand so that when we all got together, it was a bit more comfortable, which I love that. This program is geared towards minorities in health professions. And so it was a very, very eye-opening, I guess, experience for me. I typically grew up around non-black folk, at least in my classes. In high school, I was an IB, and in my classes, there weren't that many of us. I'll put it that way. And so just seeing such a large collective of so many different backgrounds who are all pursuing one thing was really great for me. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later on. So we get there, or I get there, I take my flight, I land in New York City, I get off. I think I'm at LaGuardia probably. And I'm just like, it's like a movie to me. It's like I hear a background music, New York State of Mind, Alicia Keys singing in the background. I'm walking through the terminal, and all of a sudden, all I hear is some man behind, behind me talking about some damn girl. And then he proceeded to follow me and talk about how my legs are, he wants to oil up my legs. And yeah, that was my introduction to New York City. Thank you. So let's get a little bit into the program. Again, it's an amazing program, no matter what school you attend. But I'm going to shout out Columbia because it was so great. When you get in there, you take this pre-assessment at some point, so they can determine which classes you'll be in. And these classes are run by professors at the college. I don't remember how many classes we took, maybe like three. I think I was in. Honestly, I have no idea. But science-based preclinical type of classes. And yeah, it was great. That let me know that a lot of people are very smart, and yeah. When we get in there, we take this pre-assessment where we just kind of answer a few questions to determine which classes they are going to put us in. And so we take maybe, I think it was 3 classes, and they're taught by the professors at the school. So it was a really good opportunity to get an idea of what it's like being in med school or dental school, as in those first couple of years anyway. And we had team leaders. I think we call them team leaders, but they were essentially current students, I want to say freshmen, at the university, at Columbia in my case, who either a med student or a dental student, to kind of facilitate our journey through the program. I want to say they were all alumni of SMDEP, but don't quote me on that. I don't know. I know at least one was. I don't know about the rest of them, but very smart individuals, obviously. And so we would take these classes weekly. We would have labs as well. So in my case, we got to go into the dental lab with the dental lab instructor, and we made molds. We made crowns, and we got to learn it with do some hands-on learning in that way, which was so great, so great. I don't know about every program, but at least when we did it, we did get a stipend. Not sure if it was weekly or month or biweekly, but we got a stipend. I remember because I used a lot of my stipend for my rent back home. So, and I was taking classes at the time. I was taking summer classes. I forget why. I forget why, but you're not supposed to do that. So just don't tell. And also weekly, we had family dinners. And I don't know if this is every school, but with Columbia, we did have family dinner, and there was a different theme. I know one family dinner was Indian food, and we would just have different types of food, and we would all eat together. It'd be catered for us. Now, I loved being in New York City because there's so much to see. And again, at that time, I hadn't seen any of it. And so we did have group activities that they, paid for us to go on. I know we saw the Statue of Liberty. We rode the ferry to see the Statue of Liberty. Um, we saw a Broadway show, a streetcar named Desire. That was my first Broadway show. We went to Yale for it was some kind of fair, not maybe a grad school fair or some kind of fair. But that was cool because we got to go to Yale, and I had never been there. It's a beautiful campus. I believe Yale also has the program on its campus, but yeah, but then on our own, we got to really explore the city. So I know I went to juniors several times. We had a few students who were from New York City, so we got to kind of go to certain places in Brooklyn. I know we went to the Bronx maybe for something. A lot of different things. We partied, we had fun, and so it was just such a great time, but a great learning experience. And hearing from these, top tier healthcare professionals and educators, I'll say, was just so great. And being in an environment where that's just the norm, really like altered my brain chemistry. Oh, and we even did a white coat ceremony. I don't know at what point in the program we did this, but it was a full-on white coat ceremony. I might have pictures. I'll try to find them. But it was just they really wanted to engulf us in what it's like to be a med student or a dental student. And we learned a lot. We learned a lot. So when I say 6 weeks in New York City changed my life, it's a little bit dramatic, but also it's true. Going into this program, I had every intention of coming out knowing I'm going to apply to dental school, I'm going to become a dentist, an orthodontist, or what have you. But it was such a holistic program to me, and I learned so much because it was here I learned about public health. So, backtrack a little bit. When I say growing up, I wanted to be a dentist, I really didn't know what else was out there. I learned two or three, doctor, dentist, lawyer. I'm going to be one of those things. And so, if anything, I wish I could have explored more jobs, more career types when I was younger, so I can make a better decision because I'm someone who always enjoyed reading and writing and more creative, but also strategic processes and projects. So, but you can't go back in time. So at this point, I wanted to be a dentist, had every intention of doing so. I bought my DAT book. I met with, fun fact, I did meet with someone who attended the school, who was a student at Columbia who was in the Air Force or the Navy, one of them, because we actually had some people come speak to us about the option of allowing essentially the military to pay for your schooling and then working for the military after. I didn't know that was an option, but I loved that because my father was in the Air Force. So I don't know, there was just some like familial connection there. But also having someone pay for my education sounded beautiful to me at that time. So I actually sat down with someone. I reached out and I met with him, and he gave me a packet of stuff and gave me a lot of information, which was helpful. It was definitely helpful. I actually know a couple of current dentists who are working for the Navy, and a couple of doctors who are working for, I believe, the Air Force. Who went through the program with me or with my older sister also went through the same program at a different school. So yeah, it was great. But the switch happened when we got to hear from someone from their School of Public Health. Now, New York City, it's such a diverse place in every sense of the word, certainly demographically, both racially and economically. And the Columbia University Med Center, CUMC, yeah, that's where we stayed. We stayed at Bard Hall, and that's right there in Washington Heights. And so Columbia, it goes without saying, but I'll say it, it's a pioneer. It's one of the forerunners in healthcare professions, healthcare, advocacy, research, gosh, you name it, but certainly public health. The School of Public Health is right there in Washington Heights as well. And so we had the opportunity to speak with, I believe he was the director at the time, to tell us about their School of Public Health. And my mind was blown because that's really what I cared about the most in more of a healthcare communications way, which I wasn't certain about early on. Um, but that led me to pursue that as an option as opposed to just strictly the dental track. I also later shadowed a dentist and I just was so bored and I didn't want to do that. Also, I didn't want to take organic chemistry. So literally, when I got back to Orlando to go back to school, I changed my major. I might have done it then. From at the time it was biomedical sciences. That's when I changed it over to health sciences because that incorporates more public health courses. We didn't have a public health degree at the time, but I was able to take intro to epidemiology and different research class where in biomedical sciences, it's strictly the biomedical sciences. So, my main takeaways from my time at Columbia and just kind of reflecting on this experience, which I do pretty often, again, it's an amazing experience. And if you are considering any kind of health field and you're a minority, go look into it. It's a great opportunity to meet other people. It's a great kind of door opener. There are some of the most intelligent people I've ever met in my entire life who I met through that program. Just like academically astute. Most of them now are doctors and dentists. I obviously am not in the healthcare field, but man, it's just such a great way to determine if this is what you want to do. I'm not the only one who didn't pursue medicine as a result of this program. So you get to really dive in and immerse yourself in the healthcare, the med school, dental school, nursing school experience at a high level and meet a lot of great people who can help kind of steer you in a direction that you might want to go into. And that's what happened with me. So, takeaway number one is Be around like-minded people, no matter what you're interested in. I mean, I found so much value in that through this program, and then thereafter, I often was not that was not always the case, especially when it comes to career. We're in America, career is big. What you do for your job, um, that's typically what you do for the majority of your time, until something changes, I guess. But being around like minded people, people who have similar interests as you, that is really invaluable to me. One of my favorite nights of the program, we were at the on the rooftop of Bard Hall. So it was a rooftop where it overlooked the Hudson. Beautiful. Can't Ugh, I wish I could go back sometimes. But it was at night, and I remember I was taking down all my friend's braids. Such a black moment. I love it. And we were just it was a bunch of us just up there talking. I don't remember every conversation. I know prenups was one, which of course a group of future doctors and dentists are going to be talking about prenups. Um, but yeah, I was just taking her braids out. Maybe some people were eating, and while this is a program for minorities, it's not just Black students. It's Native Americans, students with Cuban and Dominican heritage, any kind of minority, racial minority that you can think of. And so we got to have a conversation about the Black experience with those who may not have experienced that themselves. And it was such an just productive conversation. Like there was no negativity, there was no disrespect. It was simply a learning type of conversation. It was transparent, it was honest, and people walked away learning more about another person. And I just remember that was great. We laughed, we just vibed, and that was my favorite night. To this day, I remember it. I can feel the cold air on my skin as I'm taking down this girl's braids. So yeah, just being around like-minded people. Yes, you can learn a lot, but you also learn a lot about yourself. At least that was my experience. Takeaway number two, don't be afraid to ask questions. A year later, not even a year later, I emailed that director of public health because I was really interested in learning more. And also, I wanted an excuse to go back to New York City. I'm not going to lie. But I brought my sister along with me, and I reached out to him, and he said, yes, I can set up a meeting. And so I visited him. He gave me a whole bunch of information. We chatted for a bit. I learned a lot. I learned what it would take to get into a program like Columbia, which, as you can imagine, it is a lot. It's an amazing public health program. The Mailman School of Public Health is the name of the school. But yeah, it doesn't hurt to ask questions. I met with the gentleman from the Air Force because I asked to. I was just curious of what would be involved in that, what his experience was, and he said yes, and we sat down and talked about it. And so don't be afraid to ask questions, to dig into to people to learn more. You never know. Takeaway number three is to keep learning. Whatever field you're looking to get into or you're in, and this is relevant in my current role, which I work in marketing, and so I'm constantly continuing to learn, especially because I did that pivot from health sciences, healthcare to marketing, which I'll get into in a second here, but. Yeah, just keep learning. There are a lot of great resources. I'm sure at this point the world is pretty aware, but people are also a resource. And so while there's lots of books and courses and classes, sitting down with someone doesn't hurt. So takeaway number four, it is okay to explore different avenues, even avenues that you've never thought of. I know for me, that's really what I did. I wanted to go into dentistry. I thought that would be the definition of success. I mean, I'm a dentist. I have these credentials and all of that stuff, which it's great. Shout out to you guys. But I realized I didn't want to do that. And so I had to come to this point of really admitting that to myself and being open to exploring other avenues like public health or communications and eventually marketing. So the journey will look different for everyone, and that kind of ties into takeaway number five, which is life is not always the path that you expected, but it can still be good. I know for me, there was a period of time I had to kind of grieve the pre-dental track that once existed for me. Especially when I began to see other students who are my other peers who are my age and they're going into med school and dental school, and then they graduate from med school and dental school, and then they have their residencies. And I really had to have a specific or an intentional moment to reconcile with myself. That is not the path that I'm going in, because it's not the path for me. And I can let it go. And that meant throwing out a lot of old textbooks, throwing out a lot of old documents. I mean, I would have given them away or sold them, but every year there's a new version. So there was no point. It was out of date. But all that to say, the path is different, but it's still good. It's actually really good. I'm in marketing, and if you guys want to hear about that journey, I'm happy to talk about it. But yeah, it is good. So I'm reading this statistic, and it says a recent poll found that approximately 52% of American employees are considering making a career change this year. 44% are already planning to make the switch. So, all that to kind of illustrate, you wouldn't be alone in making the switch. It does take a step forward, a step of bravery for some. And some don't switch, some don't pivot, some stay. And that's okay too, whatever works for you, honestly. But if it's not exactly what you expected it to be, that doesn't mean it can't be good. So that's kind of an overview and the gist of how 6 weeks in New York City changed my life. If you do have any other questions about the summer program, my experience, whatever else, I'll leave a couple of links below, but feel free to comment. If you are an alumni of SMDEP or SHPEP, definitely comment below. I'd love to hear about your experience. Tell me what school you went to, what are you doing now. I love to hear all of that. But thanks for watching, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.